What's going on, everybody? We are back, Matt and Mike, back for some New York sports rehab. There is a whole lot going on in the sports world. Middle of October, one of the best times of the year in terms of sports going on, not just in New York, but nationwide. You got the MLB playoffs going on, NBA season tipping off this week. Obviously, hockey now pretty much in full swing. And then obviously you got college football and NFL still dominating the scene. So guys, know we usually focus on Jets with this, now that the NFL season's in full swing, we open off with the Jets and we usually touch on some stuff a little later. But while it's still fresh in everybody's brain, last night, the New York Knicks taking on the Boston Celtics at Madison Square Garden. One of the most memorable opening games, and in fact, I think it'll go down as one of the more memorable games of the regular season for the Knicks in a long, long time. Definitely highly competitive, highly entertaining. A lot to touch on in terms of, minutes, how the Knicks played. They definitely could have, made it a more comfortable win, and they easily could have lost the game at the same time. So we're going to dive into that. Then we're going to get into some Rangers hockey, and then we'll close off with the upcoming matchup this weekend between the New York Jets and New England Patriots. So with that being said, guys, we're going to hop right into it. NBA season tipped off. Obviously, we saw Milwaukee take on the Brooklyn Nets a couple days ago, opening game of the season. Pretty competitive game for at least the first, 3 quarters or so. We obviously saw the defending champions Milwaukee Bucks take that win. But last night, we saw Madison Square Garden, and we saw the New York Knicks rocking like I have never seen before. Obviously, the playoffs last year, there were some moments, and there were some moments, obviously, Carmelo Anthony when he was a part of the team. But last night, not only the showing the product on the court, but the reaction and the noise from the fans, it was definitely a first, I'd say, in my life. Like I said, I've seen a couple different moments that have gotten close to it, but for about, we're talking 5-6 quarters, really, because it goes to double overtime. We saw a ruckus environment, and the Knicks looked good at points. They looked really good at points, and then they looked like they struggled and had no idea what they were doing on both sides of the ball in 2-minute spans throughout the game, which eventually led the game to stay as close as it is. So game aired on ESPN2 yesterday. A couple things I'll touch on real quickly before we kind of deep dive into it. You got Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, 2 30-point scores. Been a long time since we've seen that from the New York Knicks. 2 30-point scores on the team. And Julius Randle came out after the game, double overtime victory, said he was tired, said he had no legs left, which honestly at the end of the game we saw that because that first overtime period was highly intense, a lot of three-point shooting, a lot of points being scored, and then that, final 3 minutes of the game might have been the sloppiest 3 minutes of the game because of how, tired and the energy level those players were being at. So, Dad, obviously, you've seen the glory days of the Knicks. You've witnessed some championships as well, some near championships in the 90s. What was last night, that fan reaction and just the product on the court? What was that to you?
Well, basically, that's what I've been talking about for the last several years to people, your age and younger. If you're 25 or under, you probably have never witnessed Madison Square Garden the way it was witnessed yesterday. And I've always said when the Knicks win, there's no hotter ticket. There's no place you'd rather be as far as the home crowd. It's electric. But for the last 15, 20 years, with the Knicks being as poorly played as they've been, you never got a chance. Even though the Knicks still sell out, it shows you the devotion of their fan base, even selling out through all those lean years. But for someone 24, 25 years old, yesterday was a revelation to some degree. Now, granted, last year the Knicks did make the playoffs, and there were limited fans allowed in at the end of the season, and same thing in the postseason. The Knicks did win one home game during the postseason, but it still wasn't a full crowd, and you still didn't get quite the electric atmosphere as you got yesterday. Yesterday was as close to what I remember back when you want to go back to the 70s or the 90s or 2000. Yesterday was the closest that I've seen to that in over 20 years, and it was an opening day crowd. It was just electric. I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch the first 3 quarters of the game. I was kind of taking a night off from sports. I'd watched every Ranger game so far. I'd watched the Dodgers, and I've watched the Dodgers versus the Braves. I watched Seattle against Pittsburgh. I watched Dallas against the Patriots. So I was kind of going to take a day off, figuring it's just opening day. I'll catch the Knicks next game. And then you texted me around the third quarter telling me the Garden was just starting to rock and the Knicks were coming back. And I decided to turn on the game at the end of the third quarter and watch the rest. And I'm glad I did, because I got to witness, maybe history, maybe the greatest opening night in New York's history. It was electric. It's the place to be seen. The stars were there. Dustin Hoffman was in the front row. Spike Lee was there, dressed up with his fancy suit and pocketbook attire, whatever you want to call it. Former Knicks greats were there. Latrell Sprewell was there. And it was just elect. Bernard King was there.
Mm-hmm.
Several of the sports talk show hosts were there. Evan Roberts, Mark Malusis. And so it was electric. It was the place to be, and it reminded you of the old days, the chance of defense, and it was rocking, at least from the time that I turned the game on, and it left you with that feeling, man, I wish I was there right now.
Yeah.
What I did to be in there right now just gave you goosebumps. And it turned out to be a storybook ending, because I wouldn't say it would all been for nothing, but with that electric crowd and taking as much as a 10-point lead and then blowing the game down the stretch so quickly, just with those turnovers and the quick threes by the Celtics, it would have taken away a lot from it. Excuse me. And would have left you with a little bit of an empty feeling. You would have still had hope. You would have said, the Celtics are a good team. We played them hard. We got some growing pains, but it would have left a little bit of that empty feeling. But the fact that the Knicks, after blowing that lead, persevered through not just one, but two overtimes to come back actually from behind in the second one, down by one with less than a minute to go, and win the game. And it was a storybook ending there. As far as personnel goes, Obi Toppin, this is the guy that we were hoping we would get when we drafted him, and he showed no signs of it last year. He had a career-high 14 points, most of them in the fourth quarter, and you saw what he can do, what he can bring to a team. He's going to be a fan favorite. The fans were chanting his name. He was into it. He's a local product, and I think you finally see the makings of a possible star player in the future there. Kemba Walker, he had some good moments, but down the stretch, kind of had to be bailed out a little bit. He was responsible for some of those turnovers. You want to keep him fresh. It's nice that you can go back to Derrick Rose there, and he can spell Kemba Walker. And he was really crucial down the stretch as far as stabilizing the offense. And, of course, Julius Randle hit some clutch shots. He hit some clutch free throws. And, it's not the old Knicks anymore. I'm not sure if we're going to win more games than we did last year, or, how far we're going to go into playoffs. But the days of this team being a pushover are over. We are now credible. We have a credible coach. We have a veteran mix. We have some young players. We didn't see much of Emmanuel Quickly yesterday. Let's hope that he's still in the plans for the future at point guard. Maybe he needs to take a step back and learn a little bit, but I think he only had like 8-9 minutes yesterday.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see more of him. Our new draft picks this year, maybe they'll be working as the season goes along. But the goal this year is to be, play respectable baseball, be credible, be in every game, at least get maybe one of those last 2 or 3 playoff spots, get in at 6, 7, or 8. Anything better would be icing on the cake. And maybe this year we can win a round.
Yeah.
And then next year we take it to the next level. But the days of being the laughing stock of the NBA are over. We have a good veteran mix right now. And I think you're going to see a lot of these hard-fought kind of games. And it even reminded you a little bit of the old teams a little bit with Anthony Mason and Oakley. They don't play quite as physical, but there's a lot of grit and toughness there. Now the game's predicated a lot more on those perimeter threes than it used to be. But I do see a personality, being taken on by this team that they're inheriting from their coach. And as far as the game is played today, I think this is going to be about as hard-nosed group of players and as a team that you're going to find in the NBA. And it should be an overall enjoyable season.